Everybody knows who Donald Trump is.
Donald Trump is the president of the United States.
Even his supporters know who he is. We got to let them know who we are. We choose unity over division. We choose science over fiction. We choose truth over facts. When he said after Charlottesville, there were, and I quote, very fine people on both sides.
But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue.
Mr. Vice President, are you aware that you're misquoting Donald Trump in Charlottesville? He never called neo-Nazis very fine people?
No, he called all those folks that walked out of that, they were neo-Nazis, shouting hate, their veins bulging.
But he said specifically that he was condemning them.
He did not. He said he walked out and he said, let's get this straight. He said there were very fine people in both groups. They're chanting anti-Semitic slogans, carrying flags.
So you're aware that...
So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
Mr. Vice President, are you aware that you're misquoting Donald Trump in Charlottesville? He never called neo-Nazis very fine people?
No, he called all those folks that walked out of that, they were neo-Nazis, shouting hate, their veins bulging.
But he said...
Their veins bulging.
He said specifically that he was condemning them.
He did not.
No, he did not.
And I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. Because they should be condemned totally. Condemned totally. Condemned totally.
Because they should be condemned totally.
Let's get this straight. He said there were very fine people in both groups. They're chanting anti-Semitic slogans, carrying flags. Are you aware of that?
Okay.
Mr. Vice President.
Joe is not playing with a full deck.
He said there were, quote, some very fine people on both sides. Very fine people on both sides? What did he say when asked? He said there were good people, some good people on both sides. I tell you what, I don't think we've ever heard, very fine was his phrase, very fine people on both sides. I could not remain silent after Charlottesville. No, I want to be deadly earnest with you about this. And Charlottesville, for me, was a moment where I thought silence would be complicity. I mean, for real. And so I wrote an article for Atlantic. And
Joe Biden sure seems to be getting under the president's skin after he launched his campaign with an attack on Trump's claim there were very fine people on both sides.
Joe Biden is not playing with a full deck. This is not somebody you could have as your president.
Very fine people on both sides in Charlottesville. Biden doubled down again today on The View.
But the idea to compare these racist and not condemn them.
Fake news.
I've condemned neo-Nazis. I've condemned many different groups.
He's racist and not condemn them.
They should be condemned totally. Condemned totally.
In doing so, he assigned a moral equivalence between those spewing hate and those with the courage to stand against it.
Are you putting what you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane?
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch.
But there's one thing we should all agree on, and that is the middle-class tax cut should be made permanent. It's already passed the Senate. It takes a single vote. We are fully prepared to work with our Republican colleagues to make... Well, guess what? First thing I do is going to repeal this Trump tax cut. So when I'm president, if God willing I am, we're going to reverse those Trump tax cuts. Look, here's the deal. One of the things we got to do is, if I'm president, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to end Trump's tax cuts. The first step is reverse President Trump's tax cut. And that is the middle-class tax cut should be made permanent. Guess what? When I'm president, it's gone.
Joe Biden is a dummy.
He's a bitch. I mean...
Well, I heard Biden, who's a loser. I mean, look, Joe never got more than 1% except Obama took him off the trash heap, and now it looks like he's failing.
During his most recent bid in 2008, Biden finished in 5th place in the Iowa Democratic caucus. He received less than 1% of the vote, behind Barack Obama.
A bitch. We have this notion that somehow if you're poor, you cannot do it. Poor kids are just as bright and just as talented as white kids. Wealthy kids, black kids, Asian kids. No, I really mean it, but think how we think about it.
Joe Biden is a dummy.
In Charlottesville, David Duke, the former leader of the KKK, said, this is why we voted for Donald Trump, because he said he's going to take back the country.
So, folks, it's time to take back America, as was said.
I am your voice.
That he was condemning them. He said not.
Joe Biden's campaign is deader than disco.
But if he got the nomination, I'd be thrilled.